Hi, my name's Mahnoor Akhter. I am the Talking Together lead for the IMechE Young Members Board, and today we are here at the Royal Academy of Engineering with a very exciting special guest, Dr. Hayaatun Sillem, who is the CEO of the Royal Academy of Engineering.
Hey!
Hello! Lovely to see you again.
No, lovely to see you too, Mahnoor.
So, Hayaatun, your job sounds both exciting and super busy. So, with that in mind, what does a day in the life of a CEO of the Royal Academy of Engineering look like?
Oh, wow. Well, the honest truth is it looks like a lot of meetings. So once you become the CEO, then I guess you do less of the hands-on delivery work and more, your job is more about working with people, everything's done through interactions with people. Mm-hmm. So as a result, you do spend a lot of time in meetings. Some of those are internal, so we've got our executive leadership team meeting once a week and lots of one-to-ones and all of that. Then we've got all the boards, so I'm the CEO of both the Academy and the Queen Elizabeth Prize for Engineering Foundation. So those both have trustee boards. And then I've got my external boards as well. So I sit on Lewis Hamilton's charity board, Mission 44, and also on, for example, the board of a construction company. And then there are lots of externally facing representational activities. So, for example, on Tuesday night, we had the awards dinner where we were celebrating the very best of engineering excellence in the UK, and that was great fun. And tonight I am going off to speak at a conference, the conference dinner, and the theme is transdisciplinary engineering. So there's never a dull moment in my job.
In your time within engineering, have you seen much of a shift towards, in the approach towards mental health and well-being?
Mental health and well-being are just not words that I think I uttered in a work context when I first moved into the world of engineering, and probably not for the first decade, which is sort of shocking, isn't it? One of the upsides, well, there are lots of upsides, but one of perhaps the upsides that wasn't so obvious about moving towards a greater focus on inclusion, which flowed from this awareness that we have a collective diversity deficit in engineering that is not right and needs to be tackled. And that then led us on to think about, well, what's the culture in which you can do that more effectively? So we talked a lot more about inclusive cultures. Mm-hmm. But one of the really important things about inclusion is for everyone. Mm. So it doesn't matter what your personal characteristics are, doesn't matter what your background is, doesn't matter what your gender is. What inclusion means is that every single person that is in the engineering workplace can feel welcome and valued and safe and able to contribute to the full. Mm-hmm. And the knock-on effects of that for overall mental health and well-being, I think, are really significant. Mm. And if you think about something like construction, where the construction workforce is predominantly male, and you have really scary, unacceptable rates of men committing suicide who work in construction, I think having that focus on well-being, mental health, inclusion has created that route to tackling something that is important for every single person working in engineering. In terms of the broad spectrum of diversity and inclusion, mm-hmm. we've obviously got still huge visible deficits in terms of underrepresentation of women, mm-hmm. and also people from certain black and minority ethnic groups in our workforce.
We've definitely seen like a steady increase in the percentages of women that are taking on engineering as a subject. What do you think we could do to champion women into engineering even further?
Numbers in terms of women going into engineering are going in the right direction, but it's so slow.
Yeah.
I think data I saw the other day said it will take us to 2100 or past 2100 to get to gender parity, just in terms of the women who are choosing to take engineering undergraduate degrees, let alone those who then go on to succeed and progress in engineering roles. So I think the biggest challenge we have is a perceptions challenge, that engineering in the UK is not seen as a high social impact career. It's not seen as analogous to medicine, where if you want to help people and make the world a better place, it's a really obvious career choice. Yeah. And yet there are so many analogies between engineering and medicine. And women are really overrepresented in medicine and veterinary medicine and subjects allied to medicine. So I think there's a real opportunity for us there to make the case for engineering as an absolutely awesome career choice for people who want to make a positive difference in the world. And of course, organisations like the Academy have been trying for years at IMechE as well. We've had the This is Engineering campaign that has achieved some cut through. So over 65 million views of our videos, and people at university now who are studying engineering say that they've been influenced by the campaign. But I think what we need to do as a community is stop all competing and try and come together, collaborate, and get that message firmly landed.
Seeing all you've achieved is so admirable and inspiring to myself, and I can imagine many of the people who will see this interview. So how were you able to achieve all of that while maintaining such a good work-life balance?
Thank you for that question, because I think it's really good to talk about this, and I will be very upfront and say that I also have 2 children who are both now teenagers, and for a significant part of this time was also helping to care for my dad, who was sick for quite a long time. And the reality is you are busy and it's a lot of juggling. But for me, the top line message is I don't think I would be so good as a mother or as a CEO if I didn't have both a really busy job and responsibilities outside work. So for me, I don't feel any of that kind of, oh, it's a terrible struggle, or oh, I feel guilty because I can't be doing more of one thing or the other. For me, they're both really important dimensions of my life. The bottom line is that my family don't think I'd be a better mother if I stayed at home more. They know that I need a stimulating job that gives me loads of satisfaction and keeps my brain really engaged positively. And equally, I think it helped me to be much more productive, honestly, because I was very clear about my priorities. It's a zero-sum game, only so many hours in the day. Mm-hmm. So I was able to, I guess, just be a bit more ruthless about where I spend my time. And I think that is better for the organisation as well as obviously for me.
It sounds like you're really good at setting boundaries for both your personal life and your working life. Has this been something that you always came naturally, or is it something that developed as a result of feeling like there was a lot of pressure at work, maybe feeling like there were situations where you were burnt out and you had to say, to achieve the level of efficiency that you want, you have to set these boundaries?
Yeah, I think it's so important as a leader to be really conscious and careful about how stress and pressure are impacting on you. I think I've been quite active in working out how to make sure that the stress and the pressure and the busyness doesn't get to me. So you're right to point to the importance of boundaries. And I think boundaries are helpful, so that you don't keep letting people down, which is never a good feeling, but boundaries also help you to not merge together your different worlds in a way that stops you feeling really able to focus and enjoy those different dimensions of life. So I think having those boundaries so you're not living in the workspace all the time, even in your head, is really important. I would also say that there have been times when you realise I'm not okay, right? I'm trying all the things I know how to do and I'm still not feeling right. And then I think it's super important as a leader to say, what can I do to get help? It's different for everybody. It might be, I've got great peer coaches or mentors in other organisations, and they've been amazing when I've had a really difficult time. We go and chat about things and talk honestly about what we're struggling with and support each other to find practical solutions. Or it could be that you need external help, or it could be just you need a big hug from your family. But for me, if you decide you want to be a leader, you're basically saying, I'm willing to go, sit at the front of the bus and drive, and you've got to ask yourself, am I safe to drive? So it's really, really important that you have permission to say, if I'm not, I'm going to go and get help. And I also would say, I don't think any problem in the world that with a bit of time, with a bit of help from your friends, and with a mindset of let's break this down into its component parts, there's not a problem in the world that you can't, if not totally solve, improve.
I know that there is a huge demand for engineers in the UK at the moment, and therefore probably many challenges that we're going to have to tackle in the coming years. What do you think the biggest opportunities and challenges are for engineers of the future?
Wow. I mean, there's just literally no part of modern life that isn't already touched by engineering, and that's just going to be even more so in the future. So almost whatever it is that you're passionate about, there will be a role or multiple roles in engineering that could enable you to contribute to that. So at the societal level, we have these, great big hairy challenges around climate crisis and security. It's quite a kind of complex and tense world we're living in now. Or if you think about the needs of an ageing population, you think about the impacts of urbanisation. You think about what it means to have these ever more powerful technology tools that we need to deploy safely and effectively across almost every industry and the public sector. These are massive, massive societal changes and challenges that engineers have to be part of solving. Not by themselves. Engineers need to work with people from a whole range of other disciplines, but together, that's how we're going to make progress. That's how we're going to deliver on the positive potential and mitigate the risks of so many of these, planetary scale issues that we're confronting. And then equally, if you're motivated by wanting to improve your local community, maybe you look around you think there should be more opportunity for young people here. Well, maybe being an engineering entrepreneur that starts a company that grows to be successful, that creates manufacturing opportunities and builds factories in a particular part of the country or the world that doesn't have much in the way of economic opportunity. That's the way to contribute. Or it could be that you're somebody that's really motivated by seeing, what it's like to have somebody suffering from a disease that currently isn't well managed, that there isn't a good cure for. How can you help somebody to live with that disease more comfortably? How can you help your grandparent navigate dementia? Almost anywhere you look, there are things that I think will be inspiring and motivating and provide that opportunity to have agency and power in a world where, honestly, I think a lot of people feel overwhelmed. So for me, engineering is just such an extraordinary career where you get to shape the future.
Seeing all you're trying to do within the Royal Academy at the moment, all that you have achieved in the past, there must be something great driving you. Could you tell us a little bit more about what it is that does motivate you?
Yes, this is something I've thought about actually. And I think what it is a sense that I've been immensely fortunate in my life to have opportunity that I know others don't have. And that makes me feel I don't want to waste it. So my father grew up in apartheid South Africa, the youngest of 9 children. He was the first in his family to go to secondary school. And he became a teacher. And I think just having that as part of my background, it made me acutely aware that there are lots of people out there in the world that have huge talent, huge motivation, ambition, but they have no canvas on which to express that. So knowing that I've had opportunity, I feel I want to make the most of that. And that I found really, really motivating. There are times when you feel a bit worn down or you're struggling. And it is really useful to go back to what is at its core the reason I care and the reason I want to keep getting up tomorrow and doing that. And then, most of the time it's fantastic. So that negative framing isn't something I've had to call on very often. But there have been times when I've thought, wow, it's actually quite hard. Leadership roles, there's a big shiny side and then there's the other side of it, which is you never really feel like you're getting everything right. And whatever you do, there's so much more to do. And sometimes you don't feel at your best. And when I've had low points, I've also thought to myself, I don't want to drop out of this for the wrong reason. I want to keep going to be part of making that positive change happen, because if people don't take leadership roles, who don't need it for their sort of, for their ego, I'm going to be blunt about this, if people who don't feel that sort of drive for their own ego or for their own just personal satisfaction and glory, if people who don't feel that don't keep going, what does that mean we'll end up with? So I think it's really, really important to feel what it is that motivates you. And for me, it is that feeling of opportunity is a privilege. And it's also a feeling that when I look back on my life, I want to know I worked really hard trying to make something better.
If it's, you don't want to give up on it if it's like the wrong reason. How do you know if it's the right reason or the wrong reason?
When I felt, for example, that the barrier might be to do with me being different, because there aren't that many people who look like me in my peer group, and sometimes that has a bearing on your experience. So, for example, a barrier like that, to me, if I really want to change that, I've got to keep going. And that's the kind of, is it the right reason, consideration that I've got in my mind. But it's different for everyone. It's really personal.
Yeah, and I do think that's a really interesting point as well, because I guess we attach terminology to so many of these things these days, because I guess there's so much more of a focus on mental health and well-being now. But imposter syndrome is one that people really do like to mention nowadays, especially with inclusivity being something that we're trying to encourage more within the workforce. There's not many that look like yourself within your peer group, and you push through it. So you're pushing through imposter syndrome, essentially. How do you push through it?
Oh yeah, so it turns out that when you go and ask all these people in leadership roles, they've all had imposter syndrome. So I think, honestly, I think if you don't have a bit of imposter syndrome, you might not be the best leader, because you might be a bit too confident about how good you are. But more broadly, I think it is a real aspect of being from an underrepresented group. So my daily experience when I became the chief executive here at the Academy was of talking to people who would ask me what I did here at the Academy, and when I told them that I was the CEO, I would see them hastily rearranging their facial expressions, sometimes more elegantly than others, because they just did not expect that. And at some level that can get a bit wearing, I'm not going to lie. There are times you think, really? On the other hand, I found it really empowering, thinking, do you know what? Every time someone has that experience, they're going to be more careful next time making an assumption. We all make assumptions all the time. Sometimes we get caught out doing it. But actually, it's a really good feeling knowing that you doing your job, hopefully doing it well, will change perceptions of what a leader in engineering looks like. So I found that really motivating. And then I think, there is just always that need to keep working out what it is that you can do to get yourself through those tough times. And for me, my peer network has been amazing, when you need to just go and get it all off your chest, but then you also need people who are going to give you constructive advice. Having that group of people who can really empathise has been so, so helpful for me. And so I think there are lots of things you can do internally, externally, but ultimately I keep going because I want to be part of positive change.
If you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice, just one piece of advice as an undergraduate, what would that be?
This one is easy. Worry less. I worried about everything. I mean, looking back, it's almost comical, the things I worried about. And all that anxiety for what? So as I've got older, it's the biggest relief that I probably just don't care quite as much about some of the things that used to stress me out. But basically, I keep telling myself, use your energy where it can do something good. And just sitting there worrying, no good comes of it. So when I find myself going down that mental rabbit hole, I just force myself to think about something else. And if I'd learned to do that 20 years earlier, I could have saved myself a lot of grief.
Are some things not worth worrying about?
I think when you do the kind of worrying that is really actually problem solving or preparing to have to solve a problem, that's useful. Like I call that sort of incubating your thoughts. You're at some subconscious level or slightly conscious level exploring how you can tackle something. That has value, absolutely. But the kind of worrying about what if, or what do they think, or did I deal with that okay? There's only so much of that can come to any good. And believe me, I did a lot more.
We hope you've enjoyed watching the interview. There will be plenty more episodes to come with some great speakers, so stay tuned. To find more content like this, check out the IMechE's Talking Together series playlist on our YouTube channel.